So today we're making paella, and I think most of us have had some paella sometimes in our life. I've had paella in Spain. It wasn't very good. Um, and I think doing some research about paella, there's a million different things to do paella. So what we're trying to do is to do it right, the way it's supposed to be done. The traditional paella is also called Paella Valenciana, so it's from the region of Valencia in Spain. And there's different ways to make paella. In a way, it's similar to Italian risottos. So we use rice, and we're going to talk about what rice to use here in a minute. And then we use various ingredients. There's different ways to make paella. Those of us who have been in tourist towns in Spain are probably used to seafood paella. You can do paella with seafood. You can also do paella with other meats. Common things to use is chicken, rabbit, even snails. In doing some research, what the real Spanish paella purists recommend is you should never mix the two of those. So never mix seafood on the earth paella. Hey Winston, do you want to have a say as well? So today what we're going to do is we're going to do a seafood paella. And so for what we're going to do with the seafood, you can choose seafood as you see fit. So we got here from the local grocery store, we got some shrimp. They are deveined and tail off. We got some squid tubes, and we got another fish here, and the fish is a red fish. It's a pretty meaty fish that's common here in the US. I think that will work very well. The other ingredients that we are going to use is we got the rice. We're going to talk about this rice a little bit more here in a second and what that rice is. We got some yellow onion that I diced. We got some fresh tomatoes here, finely diced. You can also use canned tomatoes that work as well. We do add some bell peppers here. These have been roasted and peeled. We're going to use some green beans and also use some celery. Now what else are we going to use? We're going to use some paprika for flavoring. We're of course going to use olive oil in the paella as we are going to fry some of the onions. We're going to do it in a minute. And then another important ingredient in paella is saffron. I got saffron here, and we're going to look at this in a second. Here you see these little strings. It's very important, right? That turns the rice yellow. Also important for the flavor. So saffron, should be able to get this in most grocery stores. And then since we're doing a seafood paella, we're also going to use a seafood stock. Now, you can make the stock yourself. Making seafood stock is not that easy. Some people just use like shrimp shells and other things. This one here is actually a fish stock from Spain. And they say what they're using is monkfish, hake, cod, and vegetables. And this has no other funky ingredients like they say here, no concentrates or powders, no dehydrated food. So this is the real deal. So I think this is a good fish stock. So if you're doing the paella with seafood, you will use fish stock. So try to use a good one. If you are making a paella with chicken or other things, you're probably going to use chicken stock. So these are the ingredients we're going to use. We're having a few other things here that come into play. I got some cilantro here. This is mostly just for decoration as we're going to serve, so you have something green in it. We're also going to use some rosemary later as we're cooking, and then certainly some lime and other ingredients. But for the most part, what we see in front of us here, that is all we need to make a seafood paella. So let's get going. So let's talk about rice. For a paella, the best rice to use is a Spanish rice. So we actually were lucky here in our grocery store in Austin, Texas at Central Market. They actually sell paella rice. The most common rice type that is used for paella is a Spanish rice called bomba from the region of Valencia. And we have some of this here, and this is the rice we're going to use for the paella. You can see it is a short grain rice, and that short grain rice absorbs a lot of liquid, so it's ideal for a dish like paella. And by comparison, we just have some Italian arborio here, and you see it's also a short grain rice. And if you see these two side by side, you can see they are very similar. So if you can, and you can get Spanish rice like bomba or some of the other Spanish varieties in the store, use the Spanish rice. If you can't find it, arborio is a very good substitute. So we're about to start our paella. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to use a wok. No, we're not going to use a paella pan. We're going to do a paella here for a few people. You've seen these very large paella pans which you can use. The wok I think is large enough so we can get enough kind of surface area in here. You can also use a white saucepan. And I did take quite a bit of olive oil here, and I'm heating this up over medium temperature. So we're going to start here in a second. What we also want to do, and this is right now on a high temperature here, this is our beautiful Spanish seafood stock, and I started to put the saffron in here. You can see still some of the threads here. And so we're going to bring this to a boil, and then we keep this on a hot temperature. So it's important that the stock be hot as we're starting to bring this later into the paella pan. So the first thing we're going to do is add some of the onion. So this is just our diced yellow onion here, and so this is the first thing we're going to do is just fry the onion in the oil. This is going to take a few minutes. So we're going to start with the yellow onion and just give this a few minutes here until they're nice and translucent. So onions are nice and translucent. So one thing we're going to do now is we're actually going to add the sliced octopus to this pan. We're only going to add the other seafood here later when the rice is cooked, but for the octopus we want to get a little bit browning in here. So let me put that in. So you see here we get these octopus pieces, and we put them into the pan and try to distribute them relatively evenly. And then we want to get them a little bit of a browning in here. So just going to do this for a few minutes. And you can see the octopus here, the little rings, they blend in nicely. So we're just going to keep cooking this over medium to high heat, not too hot, in this beautiful olive oil. You see the octopus here blending in nicely. I see it's heating up a little bit, so let's now add a little bit of celery. And again, there's no real firm rules for what you put in paella. I personally think that the celery here is a good complement to the seafood, and you can make this a little bit more finely diced than we have here. I made like thin slices. So in essence, what we're getting here is a little sofrito, right? So we got the onions, we got the celery, and I'm also going to add a little bit of roasted bell pepper here. We're not going to use carrot in here, which you would use in a normal sofrito, of course. So let's just add a little bit of the diced bell pepper to this as well. And these have been fire roasted and peeled, so this will get nice flavor here as well. So we're going to put this in here, and then we let this cook again for a few more minutes. You see how beautiful this is. We got the octopus in here, the squid, nice and white, and this is coming together very nicely. Okay, now comes another important point, which is the tomatoes. So we're using fresh tomatoes here. So that's a little bit of a different flavor profile than using canned tomatoes. If you want to take the easy way, just use canned tomatoes. So you want to get a bit of course tomato essence here into the paella. We're not going to use all the tomatoes you see like I have here. I think this will be enough. We just want to make sure we get a nice tomatoey substance in here. So we're going to let this cook here again for a few more minutes. So this gets nicely infused here. You see how beautiful this is, right? So we're going to just let that cook here. Maybe a little bit more tomato juice here. We're going to put in there a little bit more of the tomato. I think that's enough. So we just let that cook for another few minutes or so. Now we're going to add some green beans, so that may be a bit controversial. So if you do a land-based paella, like you do it like with rabbit and with chicken, it's quite common to put in green beans with the seafood. You can put it in there if you like, you don't have to. I think it's nice to have a little bit of a fresh, verdant flavor here as well. So we're going to use some of these cut green beans and we're going to blend them into our paella. So just before we add the rice, which we'll do here in a few minutes. And again, we let this cook nicely together here. And you can see beans here add a very nice color. And again, I don't think we're going to use all the beans we have here. I think that's enough. So we're going to let this just cook together here for a few minutes until this whole mass starts to bubble nicely before we add the rice.
Will the octopus turn rubbery?
No, I don't think it will. As it will stew here in this blend. Octopus, of course, is always a bit rubbery. I think by being stewed in the paella, it should be fine. We're going to add the shrimp and the fish here later, so they will certainly stay soft. And what we also, of course, want to get with the paella once the rice is added here is the rice will be kind of crunchy from the bottom. And that is a little bit more challenging to achieve with this wok here, but we'll see how this one goes. So the idea is to get the rice with a crunchy bottom and then the seafood staying nice and soft. So we're actually almost ready to add the rice. So let me get that, and we're going to add some of this Spanish rice into this paella. Okay, so now we have our rice here. And so what about volumes? So this is about 3/4 of the Spanish rice, and you see that's quite a lot. And I have here my beautiful stock. So this is the Spanish fish stock with our saffron threads here. You see that they're almost dissolved. So that will be added here later. So we keep our stock hot. So we have about 2 cups here, a little bit more than 2 cups, it's 1 liter. We have about like 3/4 of a cup of rice. So what we're going to do is we're going to start putting the arborio in here. Now, one thing that is very important is once the rice has been added, we're going to do a little bit here to distribute the rice, but what you would not want to do is stir the paella, right? That's very important. So you do not want to stir it. So now comes a very important step. So we're going to distribute this rice across this, in our case, a wok. And we'll see how much will fit in there. We have 3/4 of a cup. I think we actually be gonna okay with using a little bit less than this. So this here will be our arborio rice. And the smell is beautiful as this is coming out. So you can smell the onion, you can smell some of the squid. And I don't think we have to do much to distribute this further. So we just let this sit here for a minute or two to just kind of consolidate a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start adding some of our liquid to this. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add our stock. And we have the stock here in this pot, and we'll do this slowly. It's very similar to how you would do a risotto. And you see this beautiful yellow color here from the saffron. So start with a little bit, get this nicely coated here. And at this point, what we also want to do is we can turn up the heat a little bit to high heat. And you see here how beautiful this comes together. Again, no stirring. You can do a little bit of rearranging here. And of course, you see we have a wok here. Now, one challenge with the wok is the wok, which is a nice Chinese wok, is a bit wobbly, so when you keep this sturdy. If you do have a paella pan, of course, you will have a completely planar surface, so it will make it a little bit easier. As we're doing here with the wok, we have a little bit more of a challenge to keep this even. So now we're going to let this cook the rice. So it will probably take about maybe 15 minutes, depends a bit on the liquid. And again, the rice will absorb these liquids here as we cook. Okay, so our paella has been cooking here for about 10-15 minutes. We're going to reduce the temperature a little bit to about medium-high. Make sure that it's not, you can always like, there's a sense here, you can, at the bottom it's kind of getting a little bit burned, which at some point we want. We want this crispiness, but we don't want it like super burned. And this is the trick with using the wok here, because we can feel and smell. There's a little bit of a burn going on, so we're turning temperature down a little bit. And again, you do not stir the paella, right? So it's important to leave this intact. And what we're going to do now is we're going to add the remaining seafood. So we're going to add our shrimp on here. We are also going to add our fish, and the fish, like I mentioned before, is a red fish, which is similar in kind of heaviness to maybe a mackerel. So it's a pretty oily fish, so it should be really nice for this. Just want to add this here as well. Get our pieces, and you see how beautiful this looks. Here we get our seafood added, and we're gonna let this keep cooking as the stock here starts blending with the rice, and the rice is going to expand. What we're also going to do is, for a little while, I'm going to add a little bit of rosemary here for some extra flavor. I'm going to leave this in here for a while, and then what you want to do maybe is just make sure that the seafood here gets submerged so it cooks nicely. You're just gonna let this keep cooking here. You want to watch this now carefully, and what you want to watch particularly is how much of the liquid is still left. Because once we have most of the liquid absorbed, then we should be about ready for serving our risotto. Now, we have not seasoned this really with salt so far, and the broth has added some of saltiness by itself. Now, I did taste the broth earlier. I think it's very aromatic, very nice. We probably want to add a little bit of salt, and you can use any good sea salt here. And I'm actually using a Mexican smoked sea salt in this case, but you can use whatever nice salt you like. So this adds a little bit of a smoky flavor here, which fits nicely with the paella. And you see how beautiful this looks. And again, so we're gonna leave this in here now at a little bit of a reduced temperature of about medium-high. And let that cook for another 5 to 10 minutes, and I'm going to see how the liquid is doing here with being absorbed into the rice. So we're almost done here. You can see there's still some liquid here that's evaporating. We turned the heat further down, so just about medium-low. And so what we want to do is have this last of the liquid here slowly evaporate. Now, one thing you can see here with the wok, we have a little bit of a challenge which you would not have with a paella pan, which is completely even. That it's a little bit difficult to balance where the humidity still is, right? So you see on the edge you have a little bit more. I don't think it's a huge problem, as eventually it will kind of still distribute evenly. But this is one of the things you have to keep in mind, right? And you see here, this is starting to come out pretty nice here and evenly. So this will take another few minutes. You see we got the fish here, it's cooked through. Got some of the shrimps, everything is beautifully coming together. So our paella is ready. Now, when is the paella ready? It's an interesting question. It's very similar to risotto. When is risotto ready? So when you don't have too much moisture in there anymore, and you see like I think it's nice. We got the rice is firm, right? You still have a little bit moisture here. I think that's fine. So what we want to do is let's get something here for the plating. It sees fish in here, some of the ingredients. So I think this looks very nice. Now you see here on the bottom there's a little bit of burnt stuff, and if people like this, you can get a little bit of the crunchy stuff in there. You see, you have a little bit in here. This is one of the challenges also from using a wok, so we have it maybe a little bit more crunchy than usually have it. But here's our paella. Looks very nice. So one thing we're going to do for plating is we're going to add a little bit of cilantro, both for taste as well as for optics. And then another thing for optics and as well as taste, take some of the Mexican sea salt here, which is black, so it looks very nice. So this is our seafood paella. Okay, so here's a first bite from our seafood paella. The smell is great. You can smell the saffron, you can smell the smoked sea salt, the seafood and all the ingredients. So let's first try some of the rice and see how that turned out. Very nice. Rice is soft, nice, very similar to risotto, a little bit more crunchy than risotto. Got a piece of the red fish here. Very nice, still very soft. Here's one of the shrimp. Blends in beautifully, really nice. And again, some of the rice going with it. The rice, we see here some of the celery. It just blends beautifully together. Let's try some of the green beans, which I mentioned a bit controversial. Really nice, adds a little bit of a crunch, some verdant flavor as well. Here we do have one of our little squid. Also really nice, absorbed all the flavors. So I would say overall, this turned out to be a really nice dish. Cooking time about an hour. Relatively easy to do. I mean, have to put in the work, but I highly recommend. So this is a good Spanish paella.